Artificial intelligence just made content production dramatically faster. Ads, videos, images, and voiceovers, entire campaigns can now be generated in minutes instead of weeks. And companies everywhere are being told the same thing: move faster with AI. But there's a problem. The technology is evolving faster than the legal system surrounding it. Marketing officers are under pressure to adopt AI aggressively. Legal teams are warning companies to slow down, and somewhere in the middle sits a growing question: what happens if the companies willing to push the limits move faster than the companies trying to follow the rules? Today, we're breaking down the growing tension between AI, advertising, legality, and creativity, and why the internet may soon be flooded with AI generated content nobody remembers.
Dealer download powered by RS&I.
The advertising industry is entering a strange moment. For decades, creating high quality campaigns required creative teams, production crews, editing, design, agencies, planning, and a significant budget. That production friction limited how much content brands could realistically create. I worked in broadcasting for years, and one thing I learned is that everybody wants great video content. The problem is, very few people want to pay traditional production prices to create it. Artificial intelligence just changed that equation. Now, companies can generate images, videos, scripts, voiceovers, and social campaigns faster and cheaper than ever before. And honestly, that sounds incredible from a business perspective. The lower production costs, the faster campaign launches, more testing, more content volume, more personalization. But underneath all of that excitement, another conversation is starting to emerge. There's the whole legality aspect of things, because many AI systems learned by training on enormous amounts of existing human created content. And that in turn creates growing questions surrounding the copyright of it, creative ownership, the licensing, the compensation, and brand risks. You're watching the Dealer Download, powered by RS&I, and I'm your host, Michael Shiverdecker. Let's take a closer look at the growing AI arms race inside advertising and why creativity may actually become more important as AI-generated content explodes across the internet. Artificial intelligence solved something the marketing industry struggled with for years: production bottlenecks. A company that once needed videographers, editors, animators, graphic designers, and copywriters can now create massive amounts of content almost instantly. That changes the economics of advertising very quickly. Smaller businesses suddenly gain access to tools that previously required large budgets. Agencies can produce campaigns faster, marketing teams can test more creative variations, and content volume across internet starts increasing dramatically. But solving the production problem does not automatically solve the creativity problem, because generating content is not the same thing as creating memorable marketing. This may be the next major problem facing the internet. If everybody can create polished content instantly, the internet may become flooded with repetitive campaigns, generic visuals, synthetic personalities, recycled ideas, and basically forgettable advertising. Honestly, we may already be seeing the early stages of it: perfectly polished videos, smooth animations, cinematic visuals, and somehow none of it feels memorable. Because while AI can imitate style remarkably well, originality and human perspective still matter. Taste, storytelling, authenticity matters. And ironically, the easier content becomes to produce, the harder it may become to stand out. This is where things become especially complicated for larger brands and agencies. Marketing teams are being pushed aggressively toward the AI adoption, and who can blame them? The temptation to have faster production is very real. Not to mention the overall lower cost, the higher output, more efficiency. But legal departments are asking a very different question. Where did the training data come from? Who owns the output? Could generated content resemble copyrighted material? Could a company face legal exposure years later? And right now, many of those questions still do not fully have settled answers. That creates a strange competitive environment because the companies moving cautiously may also move slower. Meanwhile, companies willing to operate closer to the legal edge, so to speak, may suddenly produce more campaigns, more content, faster iterations, and lower cost creative. That creates real pressure inside the industry where new companies can potentially snag market share from established agencies. In some ways, the internet has seen versions of this pattern before. Early SEO, growth hacking, social scraping, content farms, pirated media. Historically, aggressive early movers often gain enormous advantages before regulation eventually caught up later. That does not necessarily mean those strategies lasted forever, but speed often created temporary competitive advantages. Artificial intelligence may now be creating a similar environment inside advertising and content production. Many companies are still trying to figure out where the lines actually are. This is the part that may surprise people. Artificial intelligence may actually make strong creative thinking more valuable, not less. Because once the internet becomes saturated with cheap AI generated content, attention becomes harder to earn. Anybody may be able to generate content. Fewer companies may be able to create the trust that can come with an honest creative campaign, emotional connection, memorable storytelling, and a genuine brand identity. That is much harder to automate. AI can generate campaigns, that's true, but it still struggles to consistently create original perspective, emotional timing, cultural understanding, the way strong marketers and creative teams can. The companies that win may not simply be the ones producing the most content, they may be the companies creating work people actually remember. So, how do we take advantage of all this? Here's your authorized dealer action plan based on what we're seeing in AI generated advertising. First, use AI as a tool, not a replacement for strategy. Speed alone does not create effective marketing. Second, focus on authenticity. Customers increasingly recognize repetitive or generic AI generated content. Third, protect your brand carefully. Legal uncertainty surrounding AI generated content is still evolving. Fourth, prioritize memorable messaging. As content volume explodes, standing out becomes more valuable. And number five, remember that creativity still matters because the easier content becomes to generate, the more valuable originality may become. Artificial intelligence is rapidly changing how advertising and marketing content gets created. The technology is reducing production costs, accelerating campaign speed, and reshaping the economics of content itself. But it is also creating new questions surrounding legality, originality, ownership, and trust. And as the internet becomes increasingly saturated with AI generated media, The companies that stand out may not simply be the fastest, they may be the companies balancing technology, creative, and human judgment more effectively than anyone else. Because ultimately, AI solved only part of the production problem. Creativity is still much harder. I'm your host, Michael Shiverdecker, and this has been the Dealer Download powered by RS&I. For more industry insights, telecom trends, and opportunities impacting authorized dealers across fiber, wireless, smart home, security, and related services, be sure to visit our website at rsiinc.com. We'll see you next time.
The Dealer Download powered by RS&I.